What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our Kings related podcast, wherever you may be. And today we are talking about one of the best players this past season in college basketball, an absolutely pure scorer from the University of Arkansas, and that is Darius Acuff Jr. But first, thank you as always for joining me for another edition of the show. And if you enjoy this podcast, make sure you give us a follow on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast platform you prefer. And if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment down below. So let's start it here. Darius Acuff, as I mentioned, is a pure scorer. And we're talking about a guard with an elite handle and the kind that keeps defenders guessing every possession. He can get to his spots, create the separation, and knock down tough, contested shots like it's routine for him on that basketball floor. Late in the shot clock, Acuff is your guy. In those isolation possessions, he's also comfortable there. The big moment with the game on the line, late in that quarter, he doesn't shy away. Darius Acuff. He wants those big moments. He wants the responsibility, and that's what makes him so much exciting this past season, during the regular season for the Razorbacks, and even in March Madness. Like, that's what made him so dangerous in the regular season and during the Arkansas's March Madness run. But the playmaking, it's still growing for Darius Acuff. And you put him in the right situation, the consistency as a facilitator, as the lead guard, not quite there yet. And all the talk about Acuff is on the defensive end. Defensively, in my opinion, I think he's got the tools, but the effort and the discipline at times, it comes and goes depending on the games that you watch. So the real question is, if this, what happens if you put a talent like Darius Acuff into the right place with the right system? Do his strengths get amplified, and do his weaknesses, especially on defense, do they get exposed? Or does Darius Acuff Jr. evolve into something bigger? That's the question that we have to ask ourselves as we get closer to the NBA draft, and with the lottery coming up May 10th in Chicago. And then shortly after that, you got the combine in Chicago as well, leading up to the draft in June. So let's turn this into the fit in Sacramento. And let's talk about the Kings, because everything, and I mean everything, in the past ran through Domantas Sabonis, especially the offense. And for the sake of conversation, let's say Sabonis is going to be here next season. In my opinion, I don't think he will, but just for the sake of conversation, Sabonis, he's not just a big man, he is the hub of the Kings offense. He's a connector, and he's one of the best passing bigs in the NBA. The offense flows through him at the elbow, at the top of the key, and he's reading the floor like QB1. Now imagine if you pair that with a guard like Darius Acuff Jr., a guy who can break down any defender off the dribble. And that's where things could get interesting if Sabonis is back in Sacramento next season. We're talking about the DHOs where Sabonis flips the ball to Acuff, and now it's downhill pressure instantly. And we're talking the pick and rolls where the defenses have to decide, do they help on Acuff's drive or do they stay home and let Sabonis carve you up as a passer? And late in games, when everything slows down, the physicality gets tougher, and when the play breaks, and when you just need a bucket in those late situations, that's where Darius Acuff thrives, as I talked about earlier. He lives for that responsibility. He lives for those moments, because right now, that's something Sacramento has been missing since you traded Fox last season, is that lead point guard and a true, reliable half-court shot creator, someone who can go and get you a bucket when your system stalls out or you need a big bucket. And if Acuff hits, if that scoring translates to the NBA, then suddenly this Kings offense with Doug Christie as the head coach back for another year isn't just fluid, it could be unstoppable in multiple ways if you pair him with Sabonis, Clifford, Max, Keegan Murray, DeAndre. It could be kind of fun to watch. I don't think the Kings are going to be good again next year, but they could be fun and even better than we saw this past season. And speaking of Keegan Murray and DeAndre Hunter, two wing players, Keegan Murray, DeAndre Hunter, Nick Clifford. Keegan and DeAndre, they defend. They space the floor for this Kings team. Didn't see it much because both those guys were injured for most of the season. For Keegan's point, he was injured most of the season. And then DeAndre got injured, the second game into his Kings tenure after the trade at the deadline. And most importantly, both those guys, they don't need the ball to impact the game. And the Kings already had this past season guys who need the ball, and Zach and DeRozan. I don't expect both those guys to be on this team next season. I'll be absolutely shocked if they are. And you with Keegan and DeAndre with Acuff, that could be a perfect player for Darius Acuff to pair him with those two wing players in Keegan and DeAndre, because now you're not forcing the touches, you're not taking the rhythm away from any other player on this team, and you're not clogging the lanes on offense. You are creating space on the offensive end of the floor, and when Acuff gets downhill, those wings are in the corners ready to knock down open shots. And when the defenses collapse, Darius Acuff has a simple and clean reads to the basket and clear lanes for a shot. And on the other end, Keegan and DeAndre, they can cover for him defensively when he continues to develop as a young player. And that's how you build around a scoring guard like Darius Acuff Jr. And in the Kings case, that's already in place. So now instead of asking, can Darius Acuff fit, the better question that we need to ask is, how easy does this make the game for Darius Acuff Jr.? Because this right here, this is what you call I won't say a perfect fit, but it's a clean fit for Darius Acuff Jr. with those two wing players in Keegan Murray and DeAndre Hunter. But the real question is, because in the NBA, in this league, guards get hunted, especially rookie guards, because teams will find you and hunt you. They will put you in actions. They'll force switches over and over again until you prove you can hold up. So if Darius Acuff Jr. is going to be on the floor for the Kings in big moments, that's the swing skill right there, folks. But here's some good news for the Sacramento Kings. They've kind of built a roster that can protect him. DeAndre Hunter, he takes the toughest matchup every night. Nick Clifford brings the length, the energy, and the defensive versatility that we saw this past season, especially down the stretch. And Clifford can guard multiple positions, 1, 2, and 3. And Keegan Murray, he's become an elite team defender. Sometimes we've seen him be put on the opposing team's best player. The kind of guy who rotates, communicates, and cleans things up. So now Darius Acuff isn't being asked to be a stopper. He doesn't have to lock down the opposing team's star on defense. He just has to do this: stay engaged, fight over screens, and be in the right place. And just be good enough on the defensive end on the floor, because if he clears those bars, then everything we've talked about offensively, from the shot creation to the late game scoring, the pressure he puts on the opposing defenses, if all of that stays on the basketball floor, that's when Darius Acuff's value really skyrockets and takes off. And that's where we look at the ceiling in the NBA for Darius Acuff Jr. Because if everything clicks on the offensive end and the defensive end, you could be looking at a potential all-star guard. That would be tough in the West because of all the loaded guards that are in this conference. A guy in Acuff who can close games, who wants the ball when it matters the most in those late situations. A guy who can take pressure off Sabonis if he's here. Keegan Murray, Clifford, DeAndre, Max, you name them, guys who will be on this team. And that lets Sabonis, if he's here, be even more effective as a playmaking hub. And because you got defenses can't just hold up on the Sabonis actions, and they can't just clog the paint or overplay on those DHO games. Now they've got to deal with an absolute bucket getter on the perimeter. And that changes everything for the Sacramento Kings. And we're talking about a player in Darius Acuff who doesn't just fit the system, he could expand it. A player who gives the Kings a new dimension. And plus, he gives you your franchise point guard going forward for the future. And most likely your franchise cornerstone going in to your future as Scott Perry looks to build this roster. And that's the kind of piece contenders have. A late game shot creator, half court scoring, isolation offense when your offense breaks down. Contenders have that. So for the Kings, this isn't just about adding talent. And that's what this team needs. They need to add talent to this roster. And this is about shifting the tiers from a good playoff team where you hopefully want to be in the next few years to a team that can walk into a series and say, we got the best closer on the floor in Darius Acuff Jr. And if he can reach that ceiling in Darius Acuff, that's the difference between competing to contending in this brutal Western Conference that nobody's going to take any nights off, especially when you got teams like OKC, Houston, LA. Those teams aren't going anywhere anytime soon because they're just so damn good. It's absolutely incredible. And when we talk about Darius Acuff Jr., let's look at his freshman year in college. Like with the Arkansas Razorbacks playing for John Calipari, who's had incredible players in his coaching career. If you go back to the Memphis Tigers, the Kentucky Wildcats, and now Arkansas, this past season, we're talking about Acuff, 23.5 points a game, 6.4 assists, 3.1 rebounds from the field, 48.4% from the field, from three, 44%, an 80.9% free throw shooter, over 30 plus minutes a game, and he doesn't turn the ball over much, just 2.2 turnovers. And Darius Acuff Jr. is the only player in the country that averaged 20 plus points and 6 plus assists. And that won him SEC Player of the Year, SEC Freshman of the Year, and the Bob Cousy Award for the nation's best point guard this season. And if we want to look at March Madness, in the first round against Hawaii, 24 points, 7 assists, 9 of 19 for 47% from the field. In the round of 32 against a really good High Point team, 36 points, 6 assists, while shooting 50% from the field for 11 of 22. And the first two games combined, 60 points in those first two games. That was a record for a freshman. He averaged 30 points a game in March Madness this season and over 6.5 assists per game. And then when the run ended for Arkansas in the Sweet 16 against the Arizona Wildcats, 28 points, 3 assists for Darius Acuff Jr. in the Sweet 16. And overall, just 30 plus points a game in March Madness this season. And he carried that Razorbacks offense as the primary engine for John Calipari in the tournament. And he set the record for the most points ever by a freshman in his first two tournament games this season. Like, the big picture is, if you watch the Arkansas Razorbacks a lot this season, I caught a few games, elite efficiency, plus you got the volume scoring of Darius Acuff, the high-level playmaking, still a work in progress in my opinion, and he was one of the best freshman guards this season that we've seen in years. And what we saw in March Madness, he took over games as a scorer, and he proven to be that big moment performer that we talked about earlier in this episode. And he may as well have boosted his draft stock maybe into the top 5 come the draft this June. Like, Darius Acuff Jr. is absolutely incredible. And if the Kings could add somebody like that as your franchise point guard, if they don't move up in the draft, like, because point guard is Sacramento's biggest need this offseason. Whether you get it in the draft with one of these outstanding point guards, or you acquire it through a trade this offseason. And Acuff has rised on my board throughout this season and through the March Madness tournament. So that's going to do it for today's episode here on our Kings related podcast. Darius Acuff, real score, real potential upside, and maybe, just maybe, the future piece that could change everything for this Kings team and what Doug Christie and Scott Perry are trying to build here, if we're looking at those 6 pillars that they can to talk about. But I want to hear from you in the comments down below. Do you think Darius Acuff is the future point guard of the Sacramento Kings? Leave your comments down below if you're watching on Spotify or on YouTube. I would love to hear from you. And as always, we'll catch you next time. Again, we are a video podcast on Spotify and YouTube, so by all means, please catch the video feed. Make sure you give us a follow on Apple Podcasts or whatever preferred listening platform you listen on. And until next time, thank you as always for joining me on the Kings related podcast. And as always, go Kings.